What you call love might not be the arrival of truth. Instead, it could be the collapse of your independence, the very end of your own becoming. You know, I've witnessed it and certainly experienced it myself, that feeling of losing myself when falling too hard in love. I had a friend, a really driven guy who poured every ounce of his being into a relationship, convinced he'd found his perfect other half. He gave up hobbies, friends, even his own dreams to fully integrate into her life. And what was the outcome? When that relationship eventually ended, he was utterly empty, couldn't even tell you who he was without her. It felt like a part of his soul had been ripped away. So how is it that the very thing we're told is the ultimate connection, the most beautiful bond, can leave us so shattered, so adrift? Have we fundamentally misunderstood what love truly is from the very beginning? The great philosopher Hegel, in his Phenomenology of Spirit, saw through this paradox with brutal clarity. He offered a perspective that might just shake you to your core, a key to unlocking why falling so hard might actually be a path to self-destruction. It's a viewpoint few dare to face. Hegel, in his Phenomenology of Spirit, explains that human identity isn't something static. It's not something you're born with fully formed or a missing piece you simply find in another person. Instead, identity is forged through a dialectic, a constant back and forth between the self and the world, between freedom and resistance, between the known and the unknown. This process, according to Hegel, is the struggle for recognition. Now let's be clear about what recognition means here. It's not just attention, praise, or validation. No. For Hegel, recognition is the existential demand of every conscious being to have its inner freedom recognized by another conscious free being. This recognition, he argues, is the very birth of self-consciousness. But there's a crucial caveat: it must be mutual, reciprocal, and grounded in strength. If you demand recognition from someone who doesn't freely give it, if you attach your very selfhood to someone who doesn't see your inner freedom, then you don't truly become a man. Instead, you become a slave, a spiritual slave. You thought your devotion proved your loyalty. Hegel would say it proves your weakness. You thought falling hard meant you had a deeper soul. Hegel would respond that it means you never truly formed one of your own. I've been there, searching for recognition so desperately. I remember a period where I believed if I just loved enough, cared enough, sacrificed enough, the other person would see me, would validate my worth. I was constantly asking, does she love me? Am I good enough? The fear of abandonment, of being dismissed, pushed me into a state where I perpetually felt the need to prove myself. I was constantly looking for a nod, an approving glance, an affirmation from someone else to tell me who I was. It felt like staring into a mirror, hoping it would finally tell me who I am. But that mirror was never truly mine. And the pain of that realization, that inner weakness despite outward efforts, that emptiness even when seemingly accepted, it was profound. I had lost myself in the process of desperately trying to be recognized by someone to whom I had inadvertently handed the power to define me. Because love without self-knowledge is not love, it is dependency. It's a man handing over the very process by which he becomes himself, asking someone else to finish the job for him. But no one can do that. Not your girlfriend, not your wife, not the person who left you on red. They cannot give you recognition if you don't possess something to be recognized in the first place. If you haven't struggled through your own contradictions, if you haven't faced yourself, questioned yourself, overcome yourself, then there's nothing real there to be seen, just longing, just hunger. Hegel writes of the master-slave dialectic, a brutal truth about how relationships often form when one person depends on the other for their sense of self. You want to know why you suffer so deeply, why you obsess, why you fall apart when they leave. It's because you were the enslavee. You lived through her. Your spirit wasn't truly your own. Your value was borrowed. And the moment she withdrew it, Your entire identity came crashing down. You're not in pain because you lost love. You're in pain because you never stood on solid ground to begin with, and you should feel guilty not for loving but for confusing love with escape. For turning another person into your mirror, your therapist, your mother, your God, and calling that devotion. It's not devotion, it's avoidance. Avoidance of your freedom, avoidance of your responsibility, avoidance of the philosophical truth that no man is born whole. He must become whole through immense effort, through solitude, through contradiction, through thinking, through breaking, and through building again. Think about the archetypes we often see. There's the protector, who constantly tries to fix his partner's problems, not out of genuine help, but because her helplessness makes him feel needed, makes him feel like a man. He transforms her into a permanent project, a constant validation of his strength masking his own fears of inadequacy. Or the savior who finds partners with deep wounds, hoping that by healing them, he'll somehow heal himself, building his identity on their perceived brokenness. These aren't acts of love. They are acts of desperation, turning another person into a shield to avoid facing his own insecurities and shortcomings. The woman becomes a mere function, a psychological crutch rather than a free being. The man who falls too hard doesn't need more love. He needs a confrontation with himself, with his fear, with the part of him that desperately wants to outsource the entire project of becoming to someone else. Someone softer, someone beautiful, someone who promises to make the ache go away. But that H is sacred. It's the tension Hegel speaks of, the very fire that drives spirit toward truth. If you silence it with infatuation, with the illusion of completion through another, you lose your only shot at becoming a man of real substance. And if you keep falling like this recklessly, desperately, without form or thought, you don't just risk heartbreak. You risk never becoming who you were meant to be. The irony is cruel. The more you think you're giving, the more you're actually taking. You think your devotion makes you selfless, but Hegel would tell you it's the opposite. It's a form of domination disguised as romance, because you don't want to love her. You want her to confirm you. You want her to say with her presence, her attention, her body, yes, you are enough. Yes, you are real. Yes, your life matters. That's not love. That's theft. And it's spiritual theft, because you're not even conscious of it. You think you're the victim when she leaves, but you were the one who tried to build your soul out of someone else's freedom. And the moment she decided to stop participating in your fantasy, the illusion collapsed. What truly hurts is not the woman. What hurts is the empty space where your sense of self used to be. I've been there chasing that external validation to numb an inner ache. For years, I mistook a constant gnawing feeling, a sense of incompleteness, for longing for true love. I thought if I just found the right person, that ache would vanish, and I'd finally feel whole. I pursued relationships not out of a desire to genuinely connect as a whole being, but as a desperate attempt to fill that void. Every new person was a potential cure, a promise that I wouldn't have to face myself. I was outsourcing my spiritual work, hoping someone else's affection would be my internal foundation. But it was a trap. Every time a relationship ended, the ache returned, magnified, because all that temporary relief did was delay the inevitable confrontation. That's when I realized that the ache wasn't a problem to be solved by another person. It was a sacred compass pointing me toward the self-work I desperately needed to do. So what is this work, this painful but necessary process? Hegel calls it the labor of the negative. It's the confrontation with contradiction, the willingness to suffer, to reflect, to endure discomfort in the pursuit of inner clarity. It means confronting your need to be completed by another. It means recognizing that the ache you feel, the desperation, the longing, this isn't something to be cured by a partner. It is something to be understood, interrogated, and ultimately transformed. You want to be free. Then stop worshiping the mirror. Stop demanding she be your answer. Take back the project of your becoming. Accept that no one will ever fully understand you because, frankly, most don't even understand themselves. Accept that true recognition is rare and must be earned, not begged for. And accept that the most dangerous thing a man can do is trade the struggle of selfhood for the temporary comfort of being wanted. Because that comfort will disappear. It always does. And when it does, if you've built your identity around it, you won't just feel sad, you will feel erased. That's not heartbreak, that's annihilation. And it only happens to men who never took the time to build themselves first. I can tell you from experience, this labor of the negative is brutal. I remember a period where I actively avoided any discomfort. I'd fill every quiet moment with distraction, every emotional void with external validation. But the pain, the underlying anxiety never truly went away. It just festered. The real work began when I forced myself to sit with that discomfort, to journal, to read philosophy, to speak aloud the truths I'd been hiding from myself. I had to face my own contradictions. The part of me that wanted to be strong, yet constantly sought external approval. The part that desired freedom, but clung to comfort. It was agonizing. I had to confront my fears, my insecurities, my ego, stripping away layers of false self that I'd built over years. But in that painful process of negation, of breaking down what was false, I began to glimpse what was real. I began to understand that the ache wasn't a flaw, but a compass pointing me towards growth. This journey felt less like healing a wound and more like forging a new, stronger core. It wasn't about being fixed by someone else. It was about transforming myself. Most men don't want to engage in this labor of the negative. They want comfort. They want peace. They want escape. So when a woman enters their lives with the promise of affection, beauty, and attention, they seize it not as a chance to love, but as a shield against becoming. You didn't choose her. You chose refuge. You wrapped your unresolved questions in her arms and hoped they would disappear. And for a while they did. That's what infatuation does. It numbs you. It grants temporary relief from the relentless call of your own spirit to become. But Hegel warns that this kind of unity, this illusion of oneness, is always a lie. It's not true synthesis, it's submission. And the man who submits his identity for the sake of feeling whole will eventually be forced to confront the brutal truth he didn't evolve, he escaped. And now here you are. Perhaps alone again, confused, angry, bitter. But underneath all of that, if you're truly honest, you're ashamed. Because deep down you know you gave up the throne of your own selfhood and called it love. You made yourself small so she would stay. You silenced your doubts so she would approve. You distorted your values, your time, your inner voice, all so you could remain in the warmth of her gaze. And now that the warmth is gone, you feel cold. Not just because she left, but because you abandoned yourself long before she did. I remember the moment this illusion shattered for me. It wasn't a slow realization. It was a sudden, jarring collapse. The relationship ended, and for a short period the pain of heartbreak was overwhelming. But then the initial shock gave way to something far more terrifying, an immense, cavernous emptiness. It wasn't just the absence of her, it was the chilling realization of my own absence, my own hollowness. I had built my entire sense of self, my confidence, my daily routines around her presence, her gaze, her needs. When she left, it wasn't just a breakup, it was an exposure. It revealed how much of my life had been a performance, how much of my confidence was a costume, and how much my love was just a desperate attempt to escape the profound loneliness of not knowing who I was without her reflection. The shame of that realization was agonizing, but it was also the first true moment of clarity, the first recognition of my own responsibility in that collapse. So what does Hegel offer you in this moment of raw exposure? He doesn't offer comfort. He offers confrontation. A chance to face the unbearable contradiction at the center of your life that you want to be seen, but you don't know who you are. That you want to be loved, but you've never taken the time to love the self you've become. Hegel says the self isn't given. It is produced. Spirit is only actual as a process. You must go through the conflict, the disillusionment, the break. That's what becoming requires. You must look at the shattered version of yourself after the illusion is gone and not try to rebuild the old image, but ask for the first time, was any of that real? What part of me was true? What part was desperate? And what part was simply trying to be seen because I never learned how to see myself? This is where most men turn back. They run into another pair of arms, another relationship, another warm smile to numb the ache. But every time they do that, they kill the opportunity. Hegel laid out the opportunity to let the negative do its work, to let the pain break down the false self, so that the true one can finally emerge. You cannot become without rupture, and you cannot love without becoming. You think your suffering makes you deep, but suffering without understanding is just repetition. It becomes your identity, the tragic man, the sensitive one, the man who feels more. But Hegel doesn't care how much you feel. He cares how much you become. Because if your pain doesn't produce transformation, it's just another mask, another way to delay the truth. And the truth is this: you've confused recognition with rescue. You didn't want to be understood. You wanted to be saved. You didn't want love. You wanted anesthesia. You didn't want her. You wanted to disappear inside her so you wouldn't have to face the man you've avoided becoming. Hegel is clear the self is only real if it has passed through psychonegation, through a kind of death. Not literal death, but the death of comfort, of illusion, of dependency. The death of the idea that you can find yourself in someone else's approval. That death is terrifying. But without it, nothing real can be born. Most men never go through it. They stay half-formed. They remain trapped in the need to be seen, not because they've earned recognition, but because they can't breathe without it. They think being wanted is the same as being known. But it's not. And deep down, they know it. That's why they live in fear. Fear of being abandoned, fear of being alone, fear of the silence that follows the end of something they thought was love. That silence is sacred. Hegel would say, stay there. Don't fill it. Don't run from it. Don't jump into another person's bed to hide from the echo of your own emptiness. Listen to it. Let it tear through every false thing you built. Let it strip you of every excuse, every lie, every performance. Because that silence, that raw, unbearable silence, is where spirit begins its real work. And when you endure it, something shifts. Slowly, painfully, you stop needing to be reflected. You stop looking for your worth in someone else's gaze. You begin to form a self not made out of romance, but out of resistance. Not out of comfort, but out of clarity. And that clarity is violent at first. It kills the man you used to be, but it also reveals the one you were always meant to become. This is what it means to be free, not untouchable, not invincible, but whole without needing to be seen to feel real. That's Hegel's promise. If you endure the dialectic, if you pass through the fire of negation and stop chasing mirrors, you will emerge as someone who no longer needs to fall too hard because you are already standing. I vividly recall this process in my own life. After that major relationship collapse, I was terrified of the void. My first instinct was to escape to find another source of external validation. But something, a tiny flicker of new awareness, made me pause. I decided almost out of sheer exhaustion to stay there, in that painful silence. I started journaling every raw, shameful thought. I forced myself to sit with the loneliness. It felt like tearing open old wounds, like a spiritual amputation. I realized how much of my internal suffering was just repetition, a loop I kept playing because it felt familiar even if it was destructive. But as I embraced the contradictions, as I allowed that emptiness to simply be, slowly, painfully, something new began to form. I wasn't looking for love. I was looking for myself, and the more I found, the less I needed someone else to define me. It's an ongoing process, but it's where I truly began to build my own ground, my own unshakable worth. So, what does the path forward look like from this shattered ground? First, solitude. Not as a punishment, but as a purification. You need space not to forget her, but to remember yourself. You need silence not to escape the noise of the world, but to hear the part of you that's been buried beneath performance and fear. That's where the dialectic begins, where the tension between your current self and your possible self starts to move, where thought becomes life. Second, a discipline. Not the cold mechanical kind, but the discipline to think, to reflect, to question every single motive behind your desperate need for connection. Hegel didn't see thinking as optional. He saw it as essential for becoming. Without thought, you're not truly human. You're just reaction, instinct, compulsion. You're not loving, you're clinging. Third, creation. After the destruction of illusion must come the building of truth. A life ordered not around being wanted, but around becoming worthy. A mind sharpened not by distraction, but by inquiry. A soul formed not through the fantasy of romance, but through the reality of inner labor. This is what will make you unshakable. Not cold, not detached, but grounded, present, free. Because when you've passed through that fire, when you've earned yourself through solitude and thought, you no longer fall. You walk, you choose, and when love comes, it does not possess you, it meets you. So what now? You've seen the lie for what it is, the illusion of completion through love, the fantasy of wholeness through another's gaze. You've heard Hegel's warning. You've felt the weight of your own dependency exposed. And if you've truly listened, you know this cannot continue. The solution isn't to give up on love. It's to stop using love to escape the labor of becoming. You are not meant to avoid contradiction. You are meant to pass through it. To become a man not by clinging to softness, but by wrestling with what is hard. To reject the lie that someone else can give you meaning and instead forge meaning through your own mind, your own freedom, your own relentless honesty. You want a concrete path. Step 1. Stop trying to be understood before you understand yourself. That means solitude, not isolation, not withdrawal, but deliberate space where you build the inner architecture of your spirit. No more begging to be seen. Start seeing. Step 2. Face your contradictions. Sit with your discomfort. Journal. Think. Read. Speak aloud the truths you've been hiding from yourself. You cannot grow if you do not think. You cannot love if you are not whole. Hegel said the soul becomes actual through conflict. So stop running from the conflict. That's your path. Step 3. Rebuild. Slowly. Patiently. Not around being wanted, but around being worthy. Form your values. Clarify your goals. Create. Train. Reflect. Build a life where love becomes an offering, not a rescue mission. This is what it means to become a man. Not a bitter man, not a lonely man, but a free one. And if this message spoke to something deep in you, if you saw your reflection and for once didn't flinch, then help carry it further. Like this video. Share it with a brother who's been lost in the same illusion. Subscribe if you want more content that cuts deeper than comfort, that confronts instead of flatters. And if you believe in this work, if you want more philosophy, more truth, more unfiltered guidance for men, then consider donating to support it. The link is in the description. This isn't entertainment. This is a calling. And you are part of it now. Don't fall again. Rise.